What up guys, Redshire here, and welcome back to World of Tanks. Today we're going to be talking about map changes that are coming up in 9.10. There's only one map that's actually technically being changed in this upcoming patch. There are two other maps, Pearl River and Hidden Valley, that will be removed in 9.10 for some rework. Wargaming has not stated what they are going to be changing specifically on those maps, but I can only assume that they will want to make those maps more open and have the flanks interact with each other more. There's quite a few bottlenecks on those maps to where you can't interact with the rest of your team and play tactically. So I'm hoping that they will rework the middle of Hidden Valley so that the middle draw is much more relevant and not so exposed. You can put pressure on the village, and maybe they will open up the upper plateau to the middle as well, which would be really nice. And as far as Pearl River is concerned, I really hope that they widen the middle area so that you can fit more than one tank down those little lanes and draws. And I would really like to see them rework how the western and southern flanks of Pearl River interact with the rest of the map, so that it is not so far removed, and if you want to play in that area, you're not so committed that the rest of the battle happens without you. As it stands now, if you commit to that area of the map, you're so far away from your teammates that if they're in a high pressure situation, you don't have enough time to react. So hopefully they will change that too. But enough of that. Let's talk about Redshire, and we will be covering each portion of Redshire and the changes that they've made, comparing before and afters with the 9.9 version of the map and the 9.10 version of the map. And I think the best place to start on this map is on the 890 lines. Now, the 890 lines on Redshire in 9.9 and in previous patches have been basically a point-blank brawl lane. As you can see here, it's a singular lane where heavy tanks and tank destroyers with lots of armor go to fight it out. But the problem is with this portion of the map here is that if you overmatch the enemy and you have more tanks than they do, and you want to flank, you have to expose yourself and come up very high on this ridge right here, and you can get shot from this opposing ridge here, and you can get shot from this location over here as well. So if you want to push the enemy tanks and take advantage of an overmatch on that flank, it's very, very difficult to do so. Also, this portion of the map is very well known for being extremely vulnerable to artillery fire. Another thing about this section of the map is that if your team does manage to win this flank in this location of the map, either coming from the north and coming across and defeating this area, or coming from the south and defeating it, each side of this ridge has a very, very open area here where you can get shot at a lot by this location here and a lot by this location here before you get into the next line of cover into these buildings and up underneath this ridge, so they cannot shoot you without coming out into the open. So this flank doesn't really reward you for winning this position. Once you win this position, you don't have really a superior position to put pressure on the enemy, and you sacrificed all your HP for not a lot. So Wargaming in this upcoming patch has wanted to change that so that the map is much more progressive when it comes to moving from position to position. Now let's take a look at this portion of the map from the 9.10 version, and as you can see here, even though the position of the cap has not changed, it is significantly lower than it was before. And also, as I pan to my right here, you will see that there is a river running right past the cap. What is this river? Well, this river used to be the one that ran from the northeast to the southwest corner of the map, but Wargaming deviated this river at the middle of the map and sent it straight south. And as I continue to pan over here, you will see that there is no more hill here. That's right, the infamous sniping point here from the southern spawn is gone. There is no more hill. So if you put pressure up into the middle of the map in this location here, you will no longer be shot with impunity from this previous location. There is not enough soft cover. You have some trees here to hide behind, but really the whole advantage of this position was the elevation. And since you don't have the elevation at all anymore, and this hill is completely gone, this position is pretty much not relevant anymore. And as we progress over further into the 9-0 lines, you can see that there's quite a bit of open ground still in this location here. Pretty wide open field. All these houses here in the middle location of the map are still in the same position as they were in 9.9. They still offer that same intermediate position of cover from progression from flank to flank. And Wargaming left a few houses here that were left over from the old hill that used to be here. And as we progress down the 9-0 lines, you will see here that this hill on the 9 line is now significantly higher than it was before in 9.9. Wargaming made this, I believe, to put additional cover on this flank from sniper fire from the rest of the map, from this location and from this location, and from the opposing ridge over here. So now this flank is pretty much its own battlefield. Tanks will be able to fight it out at point blank range, and there will be only amount of limited sniper support that you can apply to this flank, mainly from this location and from the opposing location on the other side. But enough of that, let's take a look at the actual brawling area. And as we progress up through to the brawling area, you can see that Wargaming has significantly widened this 9-0 line area. There is now 2 separate paths that you can take through and around this mound to apply pressure on your enemies. If there's only a couple tanks that the enemies send here, you can now apply flanking pressure from one side or the other. Please note that though there's a significant amount of cover on the eastern side of this mound, this area is still pretty vulnerable to artillery fire. And as you can see here from the opposing position, this sniping location, although not very powerful before, is now almost not relevant anymore, mainly due to the fact because there are multiple lanes going through this mound, and because this ridge line here is so high, if someone felt the need to pressure you, they could simply drive up the side of this bank and shoot you here and get enough of elevation to shoot you without having to worry about getting shot from this location or this location here. So this position will not be able to supply much sniper support to this brawling area here anymore. And as you can see here, Wargaming have significantly broadened the top of this ridge line next to the 9-0 line brawl area. I think this is partly due to the fact that they want tanks who come up here to apply pressure to the inner lanes to have to expose themselves much more and having to commit themselves a lot more if they want to apply flanking pressure to the enemy. Also, you can see here that the multiple rocks that used to be on the top of this ridge here are now gone. There's only one rock that's left on the top of this ridge line in this location here. This has not been changed. It was the first in the series that used to run all the way down the ridge line here. And there is still a bush on the other side of this rock here that you can use to spot the opposing ridge line here and to spot into the middle area as well. Unfortunately, because of some tree and foliage changes, you will have a much more difficulty in spotting tanks that cross early from the north spawn into this area here. Specifically these 2 trees right here will dramatically obscure your lane of vision and ability to spot from this location. So if you're going to want to spot enemies early as they cross here and deploy, you're going to have to find a different location, possibly doing an early roll scout on the top of this ridge perhaps. And taking a close-up viewpoint of this 9-0 line area, we can see that Wargaming have, as I said before, added a second outer lane. They dramatically heightened this ridge line along here and moved it slightly to the north and basically cut a deep path and thorough through here so people could have the option to go around the enemy if there's a stalemate in this location perhaps. Please keep in mind, however, if you want to flank the enemy through this lane, you will be exposing yourself a little bit to sniper fire from this location, or if you want to flank from the other side, you will be exposing yourself to sniper fire from this location. And looking at this mound from the other side, you can see here that Wargaming have actually made it tall enough so that you can be relatively safe from artillery fire, at least from the eastern side of this mound. Now there isn't a ton of room on this corner to be artillery safe. I would probably guess 2 tanks, maybe 3, depending on how big they are. However, if you want to start using this rock to side scrape on, you will be leaving the edge of the mound and you will be exposing yourself to artillery fire. Also, if you're pushing out wide on this outer road, you also have no arty cover whatsoever. This ridge line may be very tall, but a lot of artillery have more than sufficient arc to loop a shell in on top of the outer lane. Another interesting feature of this mound is Wargaming have actually made it very, very, very shallow, so that if you successfully win this outer secondary lane and you want to apply pressure to the enemy, you don't necessarily have to drive around these corner rocks here. You can actually drive up on top and shoot your enemies down from above, which is kind of a cool feature. And as you can see here on the very northern part of the 9-0 lines, Wargaming has actually put a nice little draw into this large ridge line to where if there's a stalemate going on in this mound and brawling area, and you have speed and mobility, you can simply drive through this riverbed and come through this little draw right here, or come back through here by this rock and flank your enemies from behind. They also made this rock slightly larger to provide additional cover. And as we pan behind me here, you can see that they haven't changed a whole lot about the entrance into the 9-0 lines. It's remained relatively the same, and the back corner area has not been changed at all. It's still very, very steep, and this location here is impassable. And one final location of note on the 9-0 lines. This location here in this back corner used to be only an area where somebody would go to make a final stand after being outnumbered and being alone versus multiple enemy tanks. Now you can use this area to snipe into the 9-0 line mound area from either lane, either the outer or the inner. This location is fairly close to the mound and you probably will get spotted. And this ridge line over here to my right, going up above me, does not protect the whole of my tank, but if you were to get a Object 140 or some other tank that is fairly low profile but decent enough armor, this could be a fairly decent sniping position. And now we are back to the 9.9 version of this map and viewing the map from the southern flank and from the southern spawn. The seals over to my left have not been changed significantly in the 9.10 version of the map. There are some slight modifications to solid cover, but the most significant portion of the change to this southwest corner of the map is that this river that flows through here is no longer here. The river that once went completely from the west all the way up into the northeastern corner of the map now turns right at the middle bridge area here and flows directly over here where the sniper position used to be in 9.9. Now let's take a look at one of the other significant sides of the map, the 1, 2, 3, and 4 lines. This portion of the map has been significantly changed in 9.10, and I will be showing you all the changes from that version of the map in just a little bit. But we'll take a quick look at the current version of the map, and so you can get a good comparison between the different changes, and you can see why these changes have been made. So previously, if you wanted to fight on the one line from either direction, you would find it extremely difficult to be aggressive. This place was usually reserved for tank destroyers, mediums with good camera rating, and good mobility so they could run away if they were being overwhelmed. This area of the map has been completely reworked. The main problem with the one line area was that if you wanted to get aggressive and work progressively from rock to rock to rock to rock, you could not do so without exposing yourself to a significant portion of fire from the 4 line from either direction you pushed, either from this location and the middle ridge or in this location over here. You would also face fire from sniper positions further back, such as in this location and also from this location. They wanted to make this 1, 2, 3, 4 line area much more relevant and not have people having to face fire from 3 to 4 different locations simply because they wanted to be aggressive. They've also changed the 4 line area along this location on the ridge slightly, and I will show you a little bit more of that in a little bit. But in my opinion, the main problem with the 1, 2, 3, 4 lines here is that there is no continuity between this location here along the road where all these bushes and rocks are, and from where the sniper ridge is here, either from this location or this location. There's a wide open area of ground here, so that if you somehow manage to kill all the tanks along the back road here, and you wanted to put pressure on the enemy here, you would have to expose yourself significantly, either coming from the south and going north. You'd had to cross this fairly open stretch of ground, and you would get obliterated from this location and from this location before you got into the next point of cover. So Wargaming have tried to change this map to be much more progressive and a lot less campy. Also, you can see here that this, from going from the north to the southern corner of this road, you would face the same problem. If you somehow manage to put pressure and kill off enemy tanks here on this corner, you would still be facing a significant amount of sniper fire from at least 3 locations, from this location on the 4 line, from this location on the K and J lines, and from this location back here by the southern spawn that does no longer exist. But that isn't enough theorizing. Let me show you what Wargaming have done to the 1, 2, 3, 4 line. And we're back in the 9.10 version of the map, and as you can see here back in the JK lines on the southern flank of the map, there are barely any significant changes to these southern hills. There's some slight changes in the elevation and the degree of slope on these hills, but nothing that will change the gameplay that very much. And as you can look slightly to the foreground here, the river that used to run through this middle draw area here is no longer here. This is now a road. This is all solid ground, and you won't be bogged down by soft terrain when you're trying to progress across this location anymore. Also, you can see up towards the foreground here, and we'll take a closer look at it in a bit, they've added a significant portion of buildings towards the middle field area between the 4 line and the 1 line. And this will dramatically affect how people are able to progress from cover, from location to location, without having to be out in the open for an extended period of time. So as you can see here, as we progress into the 1 line area, Wargaming have retained a significant portion of the soft cover here, along with a couple rocks along the back road area that used to progress all the way up and down the 1 line. You can still utilize this location for to apply some sniper fire into the 4 line, but this location is not quite as relevant as it used to be anymore. I think there will be much better secondary firing positions from all the new houses that are in this location here. But the main change in the cool feature of the western flank of this map is the addition of this rampart and this castle. This area will dramatically change how the western portion of this map is played. So let's take a closer look at it. So as you can see here, as we're moving up, you can see the application of the extra buildings here will provide significant benefit to putting pressure onto the 4 line area. And the layout of this castle is awesome. If you notice previously in the 9.9 version of this map, this rampart actually used to be on past the red line of this map and was previously unplayable. Wargaming have now made a complete courtyard area that is playable and usable as a progression point to push the western flank of this map. You can see here that you can use the wing of this castle to side scrape and give a decent amount of artillery cover from artillery fire, and also they added in this awesome dry moat that extends the entire perimeter of the castle and goes all the way around the other side. There's also a bridge that goes over top of it if you feel that you can cross open through the middle safely. But as you can see here from this location, you'll be able to apply a significant amount of pressure to these middle cutout ribs in the center of the 4 line ridge, where previously before this location was extremely powerful in controlling basically the entire western half of the map. This will no longer be the case just in of itself. If you want to control the western portion of the map, you will now have to have teammates in this location, here and here, and you will also have to have a significant amount of support from this location here. Basically kind of turning it back into the original version of the Redshire in the sense of you working 2 lines of the map at the same time that can support each other. There are gaps in the wall here. You can shoot from the edge where the wall starts here as well as on the other side, and there is some an opening in the wall here for a gate. So you are able to put a decent amount of fire into the back ridge line here and in here if your teammates are able to get some good spots. So I recommend if you're in a platoon, you should try to get one of your teammates to get some aggressive spots in these ridge lines area, and hopefully you and your team will have enough occupying force in this location here to put side pressure on the enemy. And as you can see here, the frontal view of this castle looks awesome. I think Wargaming did a awesome job designing this feature of the map and adding also the dry moat, which I also think is an awesome touch. You can use this dry moat as a flanking opportunity if you feel that your teammates are in a stalemate along this castle and along the wall here. You can dive down into this dry moat that will keep you relatively safe from fire from the 4 line here, and you can use to flank the enemy. You will have to expose yourself a little bit from fire from the 4 line on this gap here and on this gap here. And taking another look from the center courtyard area, I think Wargaming have really done an awesome job designing this. I think this addition to the map will dramatically open up the options that people have in picking positions that they want to go into the map. You can see here that you can use the wing of this castle, and this rock here is just high enough that you can use to hold down on to side scrape if you run into your opposite number from the other side. Also, one of the more interesting changes to the 9-0 lines is the back corner where Artie is infamous for sitting in. As you can see here, this has been dramatically flattened, and it is much more open and exposed than it was previously in 9.9. with the addition of these ramparts and this castle being elevated as well, if our artillery want to sit into this back corner here, they're extremely vulnerable to getting spotted. Also, they are more vulnerable from getting spotted from the foreline as well, and we'll be taking a closer look at that back corner in just a little bit. And jumping back to the 9.9 version of the map real quick here, we're taking a quick look at what the map used to be in the top left-hand corner of the map, where Artie always is infamous for sitting. You can see here that there is a pretty good ridge line here that blocks artillery from getting spotted and from direct fire, and it kind of progresses down into this location and this cluster of trees here. That will no longer be the case in 9.10. This ridge line and this hill have been flattened, not completely, but pretty significantly, to where if artillery want to sit here to get better angles of attack into the 9-0 lines, or even into the 1-2 lines, they will have to be much more expedient on relocating if their team starts to falter in the castle area. And as you can see here, looking back at the old 1-2 line area, you can see the old ramparts here and the castle that they actually put inside this wall area, and they moved it out and put it onto a hill, which I think is a great addition to this map. So jumping back into the 9.10 version of the map here, you can just see how flattened the A1 and A2 corner has really gotten. It is almost on the same elevation level as this little village area here, and I think what will happen with the meta of the Artie location will be is Artie will continue to sit into this tree cluster and this depression here, of course, but I think Artie location meta will probably shift over to the east and back behind this mountain right here, back along I think it's A7 and A6, more basically because it's just a little bit too exposed back into A1 and A2, depending on how the teams deploy. And as you can see here, they have not changed a whole lot on the eastern end of the four-line ridge. Mostly the same points of soft cover and hard cover, and the progression all the way down to the southern end of the four-line here is pretty more or less identical. There is some slight elevation changes in the 9.10 version, especially with the degree of slope in these middle rib areas here in the cutouts in this ridge, and I'll show you a closer look at that right now. And taking a quick look at the top of the four-line ridge here, progressing from the south to the north, you can see here that the ridge has changed a little bit. They've flattened out the top and made it wider, and also the elevation has been shortened. And the two ribs, as I like to call them here, or divots in the ridgeline as it progresses from the south to the east here, have been made shallower. They used to be slightly steeper, and I think Wargaming did this to make this position more or less more exposed than it was in 9.9. In 9.9, if you controlled this area, you basically had impunity to spot the opposing four-line ridge at will, as long as you had enough sniper support. But now with the addition of the castle and the ramparts on the 1-2 line, and the addition of all this hardcover from this building cluster here, and making these ribs shallower and not as high, this area is now much more exposed, and you won't be able to play in this area without support as much as you used to. And looking at the row of buildings and trees that run along the southern edge of the four-line ridge here, these buildings are more or less identical in layout and distribution to what they were in 9.9. As far as I could tell, nothing has changed about this building and all the progressive buildings that move along to the center bridge area. One thing I think that has changed slightly is just the degree of slope here. This is a little bit more shallow and a little bit more exposed. Wargaming have really tried to make this infamous sniping area not as applicable as it was in the original versions of Redshire. And as you can see here, there's been some minor changes to the northern ridge line along the river. They flattened it slightly, and they've also widened it significantly to where if you win the 9-0 line brawl area, you're fairly exposed to fire from the 4-line ridge now. Whereas before there was a decent amount of bushes along this ridge line that you could use to spot the 4-line. That is no longer the case. So if you want to assault this position now, you're probably going to have to do it from the middle of the map and relocate once you've won the 9-0 lines and assault from the 4-line ridge up. It seems like Wargaming have tried to shift the meta of this map from the east to the west, and overall I think Wargaming have done a pretty good job with the map changes, and hopefully it'll create some interesting gameplay. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this map review and get a little bit of a heads up to the changes that will be coming to this map in 9.10, and you can think ahead to what positions and what kind of meta you would like to try to create in the variety of tanks that you play. So I hope to see you out on the battlefield, and take care.